if you've ever experienced like severe depression, you know that just getting up, getting out of bed and doing the things you need to do in order to just survive is a win. I've been severely depressed in my life, and I've gone so far as to say that my general disposition as far as mood is to be some state of relatively depressed. But what I've noticed is that exercise, at least anecdotally for me, is an antidepressant. I think that it's also well established in studies that it is not far-fetched to really call exercise a therapy for depression. Indeed, that it is something that can be used as a therapeutic, dose to help relieve depression. And what I'm trying to get across is that if you are depressed, experiencing depression, whether it's situational or some kind of pathology or mental illness, exercise should be used as a therapy. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, but through my own experience and what I've learned over time is that this is true. Exercise can't make things worse, and most times they make it better. The reason I'm, doing this video is to help people get an idea of what can they do when they're really depressed and don't want to work out. Because I've been there and I know what that's like. And I've forced myself to do what's needed in order to start somewhere, right? And it's kind of similar to like if you haven't worked out in forever, you've got a lot of weight to lose and you're kind of thinking, well, what's the use? It's very similar advice, but this is the scenario of I'm really depressed, what's the use? Because most things, when you're facing depression, that is the stock answer you have for anything in life. Well, what's the use? I just don't want to do it. I'm depressed, right? Well, here's how you can start to override that and get to a place where you begin to heal and start to at least feel better. One thing is, you do have to force yourself to an extent. You got to push the autopilot button and do what is uncomfortable. And most things are uncomfortable when you're depressed. When I say start somewhere, my advice most times is to tell people to just get up, go outside, take a walk. Walking is therapeutic. It does count as exercise. And the literature says that exercise type is not exactly the most important thing when it comes to doing exercise that makes you feel better and relieve depression. In fact, what's more important is that whatever exercise that you're doing is that it is sustained, meaning that you do it as a habit. So rule number one, when you're too depressed to work out, is to make sure that you get up and start taking a walk, which in my mind is probably the simplest thing. It's the lowest barrier to entry. Begin that and do it frequently. Do it every day, do it twice a day, do it 3 times a day. The great thing is, when you start to feel a relief from depression, almost immediately from doing something like going outside and putting one foot in front of the other, you are more likely to continue to do it. The second thing is, when you get a little bit of consistency under your belt, make sure that what you're doing is actually something you end up liking. I'll give you a good example. I used to play tennis when I was a kid growing up, and I found that I was depressed, as I usually am. And over one particular summer when I was depressed, I decided, you know what, I want to make a change and I want to do something besides just exercise. And I got out my tennis racket, went and started playing, and immediately I found an interest in tennis, and my life and my mood were enhanced. So ever since then, this was like 2 years ago, I've been playing tennis consistently, and it turns out that me getting up to go play tennis is actually a therapeutic dose of exercise that specifically helps me with depression. And it helps me more with depression actually than other forms of exercise. And it's mostly because I freaking love tennis. So rule number 2 is eventually do something that you really like. The third thing, and I think that this is the most important thing, is if you don't feel results right away, much like if you're on medication or something, you really have to give it time. So if you do it for a couple of weeks and you're like, gee, I'm not feeling any better, that is actually a sign that you should double down on your efforts and continue to do that which you are not getting a result from, but will eventually. A couple more interesting points is it's actually important to find a professional, whether it's a doctor, a coach, somebody who's guiding you, to actually go to somebody who you view as an authority, whether from a medicine perspective or a coaching perspective, to ask them to give you the advice to work out. And I don't know why that's important, but from what I understand, a person is going to be more compliant and more likely to follow through on something when they have been given that advice as an order, as something that you need to do. For example, you're not just going to start taking pills on your own, idea, right? There's a bottle of pills. It's meant to cure depression. You're more likely to take those pills on a regimented schedule if your doctor says, hey, there's this medicine I want you to take. I think it's a great idea for you. Why don't you go ahead and start this medication regimen? It's the same idea as if a doctor or if somebody as an authority were to say, hey, here's a great idea as a therapy for your depression. I want you to begin exercising 3 times a week, 15 minutes per exercise. You're just more likely to follow through with it, which is very, very interesting. So that's basically it. I mentioned that the intensity of exercise isn't what counts. What counts is the continued use of it. So it's not like, again, to make the analogy with medication, it's not like, you should take more than what is prescribed. You just need to take enough of it to build up. And I really, it's the same thing as exercise. It's got to take enough time, because neurologically what's happening is you're really developing more, nerve cells that are eventually going to help build new pathways in your brain to make you feel better. So it's not just, this nebulous idea of, oh, moving my body, I'll feel better. No, there's really chemical reactions that are taking place in your brain that will help make changes over time. So that's it. Basically, I've been depressed pretty much my whole life. And I have a family history of it. So I've known that this is like something that I could possibly deal with. And, most people who understand depression know that you're not just depressed all the time. You can have some highs, you can have some lows, and then you can have just your steady, this is my normal disposition of just overall not being super happy. And what I'm trying to say is, if that's you, if you know that you're a depressed person relatively, that you're not broken, but there's things you can do to help enhance your life and reduce the symptoms of feeling gloomy. And exercise is one of them, I'm telling you. So I'd love to know if you have experience with this. Please comment or hit me up. I'd love to hear your story. It's helped me. I want to know more about how it has helped other people. Okay, have a great day, everybody. Bye.